If I may digress for a moment from my prepared message, I mean it when I say to you, you guys, sometimes you're bad. Don't be jerks. You're supposed to be good. I'm in my office every day, and somebody comes in, and they're like, hey, whoops. I'm like, don't. Dan, what is your deal? If anybody doesn't know, Dan is the worst. I took a vow to not say who was the worst, but it's Dan. You guys are making me look bad in front of God. What's that? Oh, look, it's Jesus. And he said, stop it! The word of the Lord. Stop it!
So we're in the beginning of this Pitfall series, and we are kind of diving into those things of those pitfalls that really just get in the way of us growing our faith, the things that stop us. And I have a special guest this week that haven't seen in years, but have talked to over the years. And I'm going to you tell us who you are. I'll let you. I'm not going to go anymore. You go.
Me?
You're
okay.
Here.
Well, what I am now or what I was? Okay.
Define yourself.
Well, I was an atheist, a prostitute, a pornographer, and a drug dealer. And I am saved by Jesus. I work in the rescue of sex trafficking victims. And I've been clean and sober for a couple of years, actually. So, yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Lena. I forgot that part, didn't I?
Forgot that. So it's kind of interesting as we started this church, Lena and I kind of came back together. I've known Lena. I'm sorry, I'm having those moments of surreal. Like, I've known
weird.
Lena since she was a little tiny kid, and I was in high school working with the kids' church. Some of those that have went different ways. You have like Lena, then you have like Jason, who went like a completely like these.
I'm glad
kids
you're
that
here,
were,
Jason.
that I was somehow as a high schooler in charge of. The things that we did in churches back then of like, here's a sophomore in high school. We're going to give you all the 5th and 6th graders, and you have to be in charge of
idea.
Hanging out. Yeah, it sounds like a great idea in the church. And we played a lot of random games of how can we kill the time until it's over.
Because it was the
Bible,
90s.
Yeah. It was the 90s. It was
internet.
crazy. But the story, I look back, and even now seeing you all these years later, I look back and see the story of seeing this young girl that just wide-eyed innocent and going into that and watching you come to those things. And then I came back from college and I worked with the youth group as you guys all of a sudden got older when I was away at college, which was weird. And then watching you in youth group and seeing those stories and you kind of in a nutshell said all of those things that you went through. But we talked a little bit as we talked about high school, and that really started even in the middle of going to youth group.
Yeah.
And it turned into a point of why you left church. So the question I have for you that I just want to dive right into that question is, why did you leave the church? Kind of talk about that high school beyond of what triggered all of those things.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family that was super invested in the church. My parents did a lot of like praise and worship stuff. I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And we multiple religions over the course of time. I started with Seventh-day Adventism, then went to United Methodist. But though my parents had this praise and worship like facade, and I'm going to call it a facade because that's what it was, I would go home after church. Like I remember leaving the United Methodist Church one service. My dad pulled me out because I was misbehaving. I went home and I actually blacked out. And while I was in the process of blacking out, while he was screaming at me, he punched me in the face on my way down. And I remember thinking, like, I see these I see how my parents are treated, and people love my parents, right? And they love my family, and my family is this, 7 kids, respectable church community, and I'm experiencing sexual abuse, physical abuse. There's so much brokenness, and then I'm also experiencing things from people within the church community, and not feeling like I had a voice, not feeling like, I started to feel like, if this is God, I'm so good. I don't want this. This is horrible. I'm miserable, and everybody's just telling me I need to pray. And I don't understand what that means, because I'm praying and there's still somebody coming in my room at nighttime. And it's not stopping anything. So why are you asking me to pray to somebody who is abandoning me? And I felt like I just could not do enough to earn God's protection. And so I felt like this isn't for me. And when my parents got a divorce and they weren't forcing me to go to church anymore, I just stopped and immediately fell into a very different kind of hole.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit about that hole,
Yeah.
but I think the first part to talk about there is that church hurt. And we talk about that a lot here at One Church, of some of us come from, of the church let us down. And we have to realize, right, as a church, we're humans trying our best. And we have situations that come up, and we look at a family and we say, well, they couldn't possibly ever do that, instead of really looking at it through the eyes of how Christ looks at us. And that church hurt is a real thing. And if we don't address it, right, like I've talked to people, and I talk about, like, the church does damage to people. One church does damage to people, and I hate that. And I'm going to fight everything in my power as the pastor to make sure we don't do that. But the truth is, it happens, and it's strange, whatever word you want to use, that when they use that and they say, oh, churches don't hurt people, and it's like, no, we do. And that was the first part of that, of your story, is there was an opportunity for the church to come alongside and help. And instead the church did some damage. And I'm not knocking just that church, just churches as general. We have to be better than that. We have to be open. We have to be honest. We have to have those conversations. And we have to have conversations like today in these pitfalls, because if we don't have these conversations, it goes so bad so quick. So as you dove into that, take us through, you left the church and you started, you were looking, we kind of talked a little bit back and forth with you and I, you were looking for that family that you weren't getting at home and you weren't getting in the church anymore. And that kind of really spiraled you into the world that you dove into.
So I definitely, because coming from a family where there's a lot of brokenness and stuff, and having leadership where I remember, like, people praying for me and being like, oh, there's a demon in you. So, like, the bad things that are happening, there's demons in you. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm just evil, So I kind of, when I left the church, embrace, like, time to sin, baby. I haven't been allowed to break free for a really long time. And so I immediately started hanging out with a different group of people. And I see now there was a bunch of other really broken teenagers, people that were pretty much all experiencing the same things I was. Like, we would laugh about the sexual abuse or the physical abuse or things that were happening, because when you're in high school, you're not walking through high school, right, looking at other kids and going, hey, is your dad beating you when you get home? I just wanted to know. That's not in anybody's mind. So broken people gravitate towards each other, right? And in that brokenness, obviously there's some predatory types of things as well. And I remember a guy, he was like 26, I think, at the time, who kind of came alongside of me as this, like, big brother role, right? And I had not ever had that. And he made me feel protected. He was, like, I could sleep in his bed, and he wasn't trying to do anything uncomfortable with me. And I'm like, oh, I'm in such a safe space. And I remember him saying, hey, do you want to come out with me tonight? And I was already going to bars. The bars in the town that I grew up in, I went in there in a prom dress, and nobody said anything. Like, this kid is in a bar wearing a high school dance dress. Go have a good time, just drink in the bathroom, And so I'm here with this 26-year-old guy, and he says, do you want to go out tonight? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he took me to a strip club. And I was a junior in high school, and it changed my life right in that moment. I had never seen anything like that. I had never seen piles of money. I had never been in a room where incredibly like gorgeous women wearing rhinestones and stuff would come up and tell me how beautiful I was. I had never gotten that much attention in that way. And coming from poverty, coming from brokenness, I truly think that what happened is Satan knew that I was looking for something, right? And he's like, so I've got the perfect package. You don't want the package that you were given, so I've got one that's better. And I mean, they immediately made me feel like family. I had never had a grown adult woman come up to me and tell me how beautiful I was, that she wanted me there. They were going to make allowances for me to be there. Can you come back and do amateur night? I mean, it changed my life overnight, just walking into a strip club. Satan was like, I've got the game plan, let's run this, you know?
And it starts with something that, again, you were searching for that family, you're searching for that love, you're searching for, and I know you've said you understand, and in our conversations, even preparing for today, you know, I shared about being that, you know, at that point coming back and working with the youth, but also being a teacher. I loosely substitute teacher, so I wasn't full.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was that fine line between here are these kids that I grew up with that I knew, and now I'm trying to be a teacher and all that. And I talked to you a little bit about that hurt that came on the other side, because I saw that, but I was too young and immature myself to go, whoa, you're going down a path that, you know, like I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad until it was too late. And then at that point, I didn't know how to help you.
Yeah.
You know, that as a 24-year-old, how do you help a 17-year-old going through this?
Yeah.
And that hurt that you were facing, and then it continued to spiral over and over and over. And you got,
deeper.
You know, we've talked about, right, like you got into
television, pornography. It really kicked off everything for me. I mean, before I even graduated high school, I was already on the Jerry Springer Show. By the time I graduated high school, I was stripping on the Jerry Springer Show. So they actually sent me an excuse to my high school for me to miss school so that I could come and get naked on the show at 17 years old. That's a real thing that happened. Satan will make allowances and things that you're like, wow, I'm moving up. He's like, oh, you're going to move up really quickly. I had no business being a farm girl from Beaverton, Michigan, hanging out in the spaces that I did with absolutely zero connections in life, you know? And I remember, like, even when you were a teacher, I think a lot of other people just looked at me and were like, hey, this girl is a mess right now. Like, she's loud, she's annoying, she's coming to school, she smells like weed, she smells like alcohol. And instead of saying, you know, like, I know there was people like you that prayed for me and were like, I don't know what's going on, but I know we just got to pray for this girl. But so many people that had grown up with me just literally wrote me off. Like, this is too much. We don't know what's going on. She's a mess, and we don't want anything to do with it. Instead of saying, what just happened in the past year that this is such a drastic transition? You know, I was getting tattoos, piercings, like all types of stuff, coming to school with wads of cash. Everybody just turned the other way for the most part, and there were people that tried to reach out to me, but I didn't even want that. I didn't want your help. I didn't want anybody's help, because I thought I'm on the path that I need to be. And if God wants to stop me, you better come down here with a lightning bolt and stop me. So, but at this time, I don't think he's real. So who's going to stop what? You know?
And you were so deep in it. You were so. I mean, you can go. I mean, we could go on for hours. The stories of just like the Jerry Springer Show, different things that caught in, and we've shared about amazing how little parts brought us back together through conversations or random, you know, or like just random different ways that God just kind of kept bringing us back together and got a chance to share the stories. But I don't want to leave there, and for the sake of, you know, the time here, I want to spend a lot of time, you know, celebrating, because you really have a prodigal son moment. If you don't know in the Bible, there's a story of the prodigal son and the two brothers, and and it's a parable that Jesus is telling, and he's trying to share it to the tax collectors. He's trying to share it to these, you know, of truly what God's love looks like. And he shares the story, and the younger brother goes and sows his wild oats, or whatever you want to say, kind of has a Lena moment. And
I think I might have done a little more, but
a little more. And the two brothers are sitting there, and And finally, the younger brother just dives into the world and goes, man, there's so much better. There's so much better back home. There's so much better. And he comes running back, and they celebrate. Him coming back, and the other brother's like, that's not fair. I lived that life that God wanted, and yet, Lena does all this stuff. How is this? So I guess my next question I just really have for you that I want to talk about is literally just what lesson from the fallout of the prodigal son can we take from that? What can we learn from the story of the prodigal son and your prodigal son story of you coming back, and share a little bit of how you, in your brokenness, came back to your faith and doing the amazing things that we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Okay. So, like I said, I was an atheist. And I actually at that point was beyond atheism because I was doing a lot of witchcraft, a lot of manifesting. I'm very deep in the occult. I'm in Hollywood. I'm flying out to LA doing all these things. It's terrible. But at the time, I'm living this dream life, right? Like everybody is looking at my life like, oh my gosh, look at her. She's dating football players and all this stuff. But I had this life-changing moment. I was in a car on my way with a girlfriend who had fallen asleep at the wheel. And I'm in the passenger seat. I don't have my seatbelt on. I probably was high and drunk at the time. I'm not entirely sure. That was just my baseline back then. But the car starts to rock, and I hear her swear super loudly. And I sit up in my seat because I can feel this vehicle, doon, doon. And I go to reach for my seatbelt, and sorry if I cry. Mind you, I'm a super atheist. And this giant hand, I can't explain how big the hand was, came down, and I felt something press me back into the seat. And I heard this voice say, lay down, it's going to hurt, but you're going to live. And I didn't reach for my seatbelt, and we flipped 7 times. I went into the windshield twice. I fractured my C3 and my C4, and I couldn't walk for almost a year. And I had to wear like a halo thing. And while I was laying there, I would have these moments like, what was that? What was the voice thing? Because I remember the doctors saying, like, they thought I was so intoxicated because of how relaxed my body was. I knew I was relaxed because of that hand, this hand that, like, came down. And I couldn't shake it. And so I started to, like, go back. Like, what is this? Who is this? Where does the voice come from? And I had this, like, Gideon's Bible in my house, so I would be like, I'm going to pluck through it, God bless the Gideons. I mean, they're working hard, So
One small Bible at a time.
Yeah, one small Bible at a time. So I didn't really know God, didn't really want to. I was so hurt. Sometimes I look back, I don't think I was an atheist as much as I was angry. And so I remember one day I was having this, like, argument with God. Like, if you're so loving, if you're so good, you destroyed my life. You took everything from me. My loft is almost gone. I can't afford my bills. I can't dance. I can't do anything. I can't do porn. I can't do any of the stuff that I do to make an income. I have a broken neck. And I heard that voice a second time. And it said, what makes you think I didn't save you? And I just broke. I just broke inside. Something just like years of this shell came off of me. Absolutely came off of me. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle coming back to the Lord. And the thing is that I think we look at the story of the prodigal son, and I understand the one brother, right, who's like, I've done everything right. But I empathize with the guy who went out in the world because we see things and we see these people, and it's like, oh, you got to go have this great life, and then you got back to God, and like, oh, good for you. But that brother probably had PTSD. He probably has trauma. He has addictions that he's going to have to fight for the rest of his life. Like, it's not all hunky-dory. There's a lot of times where I have to go back, right? Because now I have this different calling in my life. I have to go back into the same strip club that I was trafficked out of and go sit and pray with girls, knowing sometimes they're not going to leave. I attend funeral after funeral for sex worker after sex worker. I continue to watch wickedness and brokenness, and it affects me. These are people that I love. They're people that I know. I shudder when people touch me. I have all of these different things. Like, I am healing, but I don't know that I will ever be fully healed from the things that I went through. And that's how I see that brother. Yeah, did he have a good time? Sometimes. Does he have to live with the memories? Does he have to live with the remorse, the deep sadness of knowing that this is not the way that it should have been? Probably. The other brother has God's grace because he did things the right way, you know? And so he can be empathetic to what the other has gone through. But that broken son will probably be broken forever. But God is going to continue to pour into him and use that brokenness. That's where you win. You know, that's why I love that story. God uses my brokenness, you know?
And I thank you for honestly, you know, using your brokenness and using, right? Like, because we talk about that as the definition. We talk about that we glamorize the world, right?
Yeah.
Like we see those things and we say, oh, look how wonderful this is going to be. We glamorize even the exit of the world. Like, look how far. But you and I have had enough of the collateral damage. We talk about the collateral damage of the life that you lived and that part. And God's love is so amazing, but your time, you know, and we talk about this, like when you get to heaven, that's a whole different story. But
that's where I get my real healing.
Yeah, that's where you get your real healing. Yeah, but right, like the stuff that you have to face and the collateral damage and the stuff, and I think of the right, like even the story of us in our friendship, and it's hard because, and we shared this on the phone, I think one of the times we talked, and I said it's hard because like I look back again and I see the little girl,
the little kid,
and I see the beauty of that, but it's hard when you describe, okay, who's Lena? Well, okay, she's an ex-prostitute. She's like, even we as a world, in somebody that loves you, puts those titles instead of the title of, she has an amazing story of how God loved her through some of the darkest things, and instead that really needs to be that, and I think it was so fitting because in our talk we talked about Revelations 21:4, and I got that if you want to read that for everybody, because just the verse and the power.
Absolutely, it's what I love it. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. I can't wait for that day. I'm telling you. Not that I want to die right now, okay? I'm not saying it that way. But I cannot wait for the day where I do not wake up and cry deeply because I just lost another girl to addiction or sex trafficking, you know? So
and absolutely, and I love hearing the story. I love following, you know, hearing your stories of going into strip clubs and talking to women that are, you know, and trying to explain to a woman, I think you said this to me, that's working 2 days a week, making $80,000 plus a year. How do I tell this lady that has 3 kids to go, you need to leave that world? You
By
know,
the
like,
way, Satan's going to take it all when you go. You're going to have nothing. So come on over. It's more fun over here. You know?
More fun to have no money to have.
It's fun to be homeless. You know.
But that you're never giving up on them. You're never, and I think that's kind of the beauty of your story and the pitfall of most. I don't believe, you know, really anybody else in here has had that exact pitfall or went that deep, but we all have pitfalls of diving deep into something that we can't mention. And the beauty that you shared with me the other day, and you said, I have to be able to tell my story so others can learn from it and can grow and can see a way out of those stories.
Yes. So, you want me to talk
whatever God's leading, you go.
When I became a Christian again, right, first of all, I didn't understand the Bible. Even though I grew up just being told to memorize things, right? So I did a lot of that. But I didn't understand God, his nature, his character. I just knew, like, big, angry creature in the sky, I'm worthless worm person. And I would ask people in the church questions like, hey, what do you do when you see, like, red eyes swirling around your room? And they'd be like, just pray about it. Because nobody had told me, like, hey, you're leaving the occult. You've been pulling out of Satan's storehouse for 15 years now and gotten wealthy off of his goodies, and you're manifesting and your witchcraft and everything you've been doing, and he's coming now. Nobody talked to me about any of that. So I kept thinking I'm still bad. And I think that, so I was like, I'm going to be a Christian and I'm going to be good. And I'm never going to tell anybody about anything that I did, right? Because that's what being a Christian is. Like, I'm blameless now. I'm clean slate. Nothing ever happened. And I would pray this prayer, and I call it like a dangerous prayer, where you're like, God, use me. God, use me. And I remember I was in hair school, just trying to be a regular person. And this girl came up to me. And I had been praying my dangerous prayer of, God, use me. And she goes, I don't know why, and I don't even like this girl. I'm just going to be honest. There was something that I'm like, I don't like you, you know? So her approach to me was already like, be gone, peasant. I'm a changed creature now. And so I remember her walking up and saying, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm supposed to ask you. I need to talk to you about something. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. And my teacher made us actually go out in the hall together. You know, and I'm like, I do not, and I'm sure had no face filter, rolling my eyes, you know, the whole everything. What do you want? And she goes, I'm pregnant, I'm stripping, and I'm considering having an abortion. And I'm like, pregnant, stripper, who had an abortion. Boom. Many abortions in my time doing that. And I'm like, So in order to be this changed person, in order to minister, and in order to reach to her, right, the only way that I can do that is by being honest, which is humiliating for me, to say, you don't want to do this. You don't. Like, just, you don't want to do this. That guy's not going to be there in a year. You know, the baby is going to be there. The job is not going to last. They're using you, you know. If you can, use this as an opportunity to get out. I mean, but I have to, like, lay all of my garbage on the line. And again, I'd be out, somebody, I just need to talk to you. I'm really, really struggling with drug addiction. Of course you are, you know, because so am I. Like, and so I have to keep being honest. And I started to see God is not like, I want this washed up, shiny white version of you. God is like, I want you to talk about prostitution. I want you to talk about your drug use. I want you to talk about how you're still struggling with drug use. I want you to lay your abortions on the altar so that we can get other people over here, you know. It's a dangerous prayer. God, use me. Be ready, by the way, if you start praying that, okay? Be ready for the humility walk. So.
No, and I think that's so beautiful, and I guess the pitfall that I really want to kind of close with and talk about, and I'm excited you're going to hang out with the high schoolers for a little bit at youth group.
Yeah, talk to your kids. That sounded ominous.
You went dangerous there. I was like, oh great, you're going to tell them all the stories about how bad I was as a youth pastor.
That's coming up too.
Yeah, that's. Yeah. They got the new version of John. You had the John 1.0 that didn't really know what he was doing.
We'll leave 99 John in the back pocket then. It's okay.
Good, because that's a scary spot too. But right, like we're just, and I just need you to know, and I need everybody here to understand that, you know, you're going through your own pitfall. You're going through your own stuff. And God walks through Lena's story, but he walks through your story. He walks through the situation you're facing. And in those crying out and in those moments of that seem, whether it's so deep that you have no family, that, you know, that's physically abusing you, you're in drugs, you're in whatever, or you're just really just struggling with something else. It's amazing to me that God's love is equal in all of that. And when you can lean into that and understand that. And so maybe you've been away from God. Maybe you've been struggling. Maybe you have that prodigal son moment yourself that you're going in and you're just walking away from God. We just really, I think it just kept coming back up. And the one sentence that is our take-home point that I really want you to know is that there is no timeline for your healing.
Amen.
And I think that's something that we've had to walk through and as we've talked about and talking about over the years is there is no timeline for that, and there's no timeline, and you may never get fully healed until the end, but until you're in heaven, or however you want to put that, right? Like there's no timeline. You may not see that. You may have to live with that PTSD. You may have to live with that collateral damage of what you did.
But don't give up on God. He's not giving up on you.
Yeah, exactly. He's not giving up on you, and right, just the power of that, and I will say, you know, even if people want to talk or pray afterwards, I know we'll both be around, and if you want to talk to Lena, that's perfect. Just a chance to do that, and then hanging out with the youth and all that. But I just really think it's so important for you to just know that in the midst of that, all of those stories, God loves you, and even we're going to share a little bit your walkout song here in a minute, but even in the middle of the walkout song, and the power of the music and the power of God, how you shared with me the other day of, you were in the middle of the strip club doing all this stuff, getting ready for your show, and then like the songs that we used to sing years ago at church,
Yeah.
you would like play.
That was embarrassing.
Or
Yeah.
listen to like here in my head I'm just laughing because I'm seeing this like the motions or different things that
Yeah.
we did for songs, like you're doing that.
On the strip club stage. So when I was an atheist, I really loved the song Flood by Jars of Clay. And I brought it to the strip club, and I was like, I want you to play this song. And so I was like playing praise and worship music. God's probably just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what are you doing? Like, I love this song. It's a real banger, you know, on the club stage. And like telling my daughter this, and she's like, so you were playing Christian music at the strip club, but you thought you were an atheist? And she's like, I don't think God was ever really done with you. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point, you know.
So right, like God, that healing, God's not done with you.
Yeah.
God's working. And I just want everybody here to just be reminded of that,
Yeah.
just how much God really loves you and walks through those dark times
Yes, yeah.
with you. So I'm just going to close us in a word of prayer, if that's okay. And just
Yeah,
for the
can I
people.
say something
Yes.
real quick? There's
No.
something that was
You're
no.
done. No,
Oh, I
that's
gotta
not
go.
your-
There was something in my that this morning when I was praying that if you take nothing from this, I just feel like there's enough parents and enough people in here. Please, talk to your children about tough things. Talk to your children about pornography. Talk to your children about addiction. Talk to your children about these things, because if you don't, the devil will. I knew nothing about any of those things going into it. I didn't know that there was such thing as an alcohol overdose, a drug overdose, because my parents were like, we're protecting her from the world, right? By not talking. When I was being sexually abused, I didn't know the terminology. I just thought, well, I'm being forced to play doctor, you know, so I think I'm bad. Talk to your kids, because I didn't know there was not sex trafficking when I was young. The only sex trafficking I ever knew about was like a pimp with a girl and a gun on the street. I didn't know that a corporation could be a pimp. I didn't know that. I didn't know that pornography is filled with victims. I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know that somebody getting me high so they could take incredibly horrible pictures of me is sex trafficking. I didn't know those things. There was no terminologies for it. Have hard conversations, identify these things, and find a way to just say, God, allow me to give them this space, even if I don't like the answer, to talk to me. Because I went 15 years into a hole because nobody stopped and said, this is wrong. This is super wrong, you know? So just when you think about your kids, just pray over it, you know? Just praying and ask God for discernment. What's on my spirit to bring up? Because if you don't bring it up, the devil will exploit it. I mean that. He absolutely will. So I don't mean to be all dark and ominous, but it's super true. Okay?
Very
Yeah.
true. Very, very point. Having those tough
Yeah,
conversations.
have the tough talks. You need to have the tough talks. Yeah.
Let's pray.
I would love that.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much. Thank you for just a chance today to be very real and very honest. God, I pray for people that are just caught in this evil, and just that I pray that you will find a way out. Use us as a church, use us, and use people like Lena that are right there on the front lines, doing some amazing things to help, not to judge, but to be there to help. I just pray for the ministry that she does in Grand Rapids area, and just that you will continue to bless that and watch over her and her family, and just, God, help us as parents to have those tough, difficult conversations with our kids that need to happen. And God, I just ask that you will continue to give us the words to love for the people that need the love, and to have those conversations with people that need to have those conversations, and to seek out to a very lost and hurting world. It's in your name we pray. Amen.